Hi, I'm Robert DeLena.
Hi, I'm Ryan DeLena, and you're listening to Ski Rex Media Podcast.
Good day, everyone, and welcome back to the Ski Rex Media Podcast, Off-Season Shenanigans. That's right, we're going to do a little something for the summer here, and I hope your summer is off to a good start. Though I don't think we've actually hit the official first day of summer yet, but what the heck, the snow is all melted here in New England. The season's over. Well, you know what? No, that's wrong. Tim, that's stupid. The season doesn't end if you don't want it to. You could go to higher elevations and places where there's still tons of snow. You could go inside. You could go to dry slopes. You could go to the other hemisphere if you'd like. That's right. The season doesn't actually end. But since we're here in the northern hemisphere, in New England, since I'm here, I think we should do a little something for the off season. Now, what am I going to do for the off-season and for the off-season shenanigans program? Well, it's going to be a couple different things. It's going to be a lot like the traditional Ski Rex Media podcast. We're going to have guests, and today's show is no different. Today, we start working on that summer reading list, and we have a couple of authors on the program, which we have had before, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But, I want to see, besides guests, what else can I do? I'm going to go outside and report back. I'm gonna find some other activities for us to do, maybe. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure where the program is going to go. I do know we're gonna do some prep. We're going to prep for the next season, and that's going to include a guest or two as well, I hope. But first, let's talk about the Ski Rex Media partners, the sponsors. That's right, it doesn't change. The seasons may change, but my partners do not, and we start with Whaleback Mountain, my home mountain. Now, you could say, Tim, how are you going to talk about Whaleback Mountain when there's no snow on Whaleback Mountain? Doesn't matter. They're not done. They're still working over there. Plenty of things to do over at Whaleback Mountain during the off season. There's stuff for your kids camps. There's stuff for the families, family events. There is the return of the Adam Ezra group. That's right, that rock and roll music over on the side of Whaleback Mountain. It was a lot of fun. Adam Ezra group, very good band, awesome. July 1st, tickets are on sale now. Get your tickets. I will be there. Whaleback Mountain, ski it to believe it. And then visit it during the off season so you can see the music, do the camps, play volleyball, disc golf, hike up it if you want to. It's great. Whaleback Mountain, I love it. I suggest you visit it as well. Right off I-89 in Enfield, New Hampshire, right off of exit 16. It's the most accessible ski area I have ever found. Also, when you're getting ready for the season, you might need some new gear for next season. Go ahead and check out saintskis.com. That's the website for Saint Custom Skis and Snowboards. If you want something built custom, now's the time to do it. Order it now. Get it while the getting's good, right? Skis, snowboards, whatever you want them to build for you, they will build it. Your graphics, your width, your length, your cut, your whatever you need. You call up KJ and his dad Kevin and they can build it for you. Saint Custom Skis and Snowboards out there in Gorham, New Hampshire. Get yourself your very own, unique, just all yours, no one else has a pair of skis or a snowboard, and then be the most unique person on the mountain in the season, in the new season.
Now, we're here with, the summer program. I don't usually do a summer program because I like to not work. But I figured why not work this season and keep the name going and everything. Plus, we all do stuff. Skiers, snowboarders, what have you. We're all doing stuff. And part of that is the summer reading list. What are you reading? Reading some fiction by Wendy Clinch? You're reading some tips and trick books by Caroline Elliott and Kim K. Are you reading 30 Years in a White Haze? Dan Egan, you all know who he is. Well, because of Dan Egan, I'm talking to two more authors who have quite the story. Robert DeLena, his son, Ryan DeLena. Gentlemen, how you doing?
Thank you, Tim, for having us.
Good to be here. It's funny that you mention the summer circuit. Like, what do skiers do in the summer? We need to do something. And I realized when I became a climber, I'm like, I needed this so bad. My friend and I used to cross a swamp. It would take all day. And that was like how we kept ourselves busy because we just needed to occupy our bodies and minds.
Absolutely, dude. That's 100% awesome that you said it and that you offered it up, because there's people, they tell me all the time, they're like, what, you're such a skier, which I'm not good. I don't do cool stuff like you guys. And we'll get into that and whatnot. And I'm awful. I couldn't keep up with you. Not even on a green. 100%.
Maybe me. You might keep up with me, but not Ryan.
Maybe. Well, it's funny. I was reading the book, which I have the book in front of me for reference, and I'm reading the Antarctica trip. Now, all right, here's the son of a gun here. I like the book. It's a great story. 100% gonna suggest it to anybody. Great story. And it's kind of a lot of bang for your buck, because it's almost like 2 books because of the way it's set up. And we'll get into that. But the trick of any interviewer, of any journalist, is to talk about the book without talking about it, because I want people to read it. I don't want to ruin it. No spoilers, I think, is what the kids say these days. I don't know. Yep. Ryan, you would know better. You're closer to kids than I am.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's probably an old one, but I think it's the one thing that hasn't changed. We haven't found a way to make new slang for it.
Totally, dude. And so here's what we're going to do. Let's talk first about the setup. Now, we have the same story coming from 2 different people. And when you read the book, it is set up. It is very specific. What is Robert saying? What is Ryan saying? How'd you come up with the idea for that, or why? And I think you do go into that in the book, so I'll let you balance out that answer.
I think it was intentional. I think originally we thought we would both write our parts and then we would meld it together. And then I saw it was an Alex Honnold book, Ryan. It was a climbing book.
Originally our plan, I don't even know if you remember this because it was just so many drafts ago, but we were going to do it as a 2-book in a box thing, which that would have been really hard to get a publisher to do. Sure. And at the time I was listening to Alex Honnold's Alone on the Wall, and I'm like, this is really interesting. It's like a book about him, but it has excerpts from him about the stuff they're talking about. And it's a really interesting juxtaposition, because it's he's so no big deal. He'll talk about free soloing 513, sure. It's just his backyard walk. But then you pair that with the guy who's writing it about him, I forget his name, and it's just this was the most insane climb that ever happened, and the community went crazy. So I was like, what if we did that with our book, where it's my perspective of these are the things that are happening to me, and then we have his perspective as the parent. And that took a long time to perfect, because we were redundant for a lot of it, because we didn't even read each other's versions when we started. We wrote 2 separate books, and then we showed each other what we wrote, and that was kind of crazy.
That's awesome, though, because it worked out really, really well. Now, before I go too much further, the book is called Without Restraint, How Skiing Saved My Son's Life. So this is we're talking skiing still in the summer reading list. Now, the story is ridiculously amazing. Like I said, and as Ryan explained, we have a couple different, it's not 2 versions of the same story. It's just 2 people telling it, which is great. It'd be like if you're sitting in the room talking to these 2 and just letting them, bounce stuff off you. It's wonderful. Now, what if you, you can interpret the story in a lot of different ways. Now, if you're a New Englander, like I'm a New Englander, I grew up in New England. There's all kinds of stuff in here, little stuff. We talk, just name your mountain. These guys mentioned it in the book. It's awesome. Massachusetts, born and raised, I don't know where they live. So that's not a worry, but I'm not putting anybody in danger, honest, I swear. But, we're all New Englanders here. So there's a lot of stuff like that. It was again, Dan Egan introduced Rob to Ski Rex Media, so that's how we are. So I'll reference 30 Years Away. Hey, same thing. You read that book, it's ooh, New England, New England, New England, New England, New England. But the main story is about both of them. And that's what I was getting to. Pardon my going around in circle. I'm under the weather. I'm sorry, everybody. It sucks. But the story is about both of them. It's what Ryan went through as a kid and what Robert went through as a parent, and how that all culminated in the end of the book, which I'm not going to give away. Robert, so the story you wanted to get across was being the parent and what that was like for you, correct?
Yeah. So you have this struggling kid, and we can come back to this, but Ryan was in a really tough spot as a kid. He was just a kid who didn't listen to grown-ups, and it was a really fun kid to parent for that reason. But when he got to schools, the schools were really didn't know what to do with him, didn't know how to handle him. Fast forward a little bit, the public schools eventually threw up their hands and sort of gave up and pushed him into these therapeutic schools, which were a disaster. He was restrained. I mean, that's where without restraint comes from. He was restrained every day at school, sometimes multiple times a day, pushed medication, eventually was recommended into a mental hospital to manipulate his meds even more. And just at the point as a parent where we were just sort of out of moves, we used to try to find activities to get him out of the house when things would go wrong. And I skied very little as a kid, a couple YMCA bus trips from Revere, Mass to Bradford Hill. And I was a baseball player, gave up skiing, never wanted to get hurt. So I hadn't skied in 25 years and was just desperate for something to do with him. And one day I said, Ryan, let's get out of here. Do you want to go skiing? Neshoba is about 45 minutes from our house. We drove to Neshoba. And I mean, we'll get back into the Neshoba piece, but Neshoba led to Wachusett, led to Loon, led to Vail, led to, Stowe, led to Vail, and eventually we get to Antarctica 10 years later. So, here are these two beginners who just start this random journey, find this thing that he loves. I can see that he loves it. And as a father, I just wanted to put him in a position at least once a week where he was happy, because the rest of the week, when he was at school, he was in a pretty miserable place. And it
Sure.
was, and it really, in the beginning, was just finding something where he could be happy for a few minutes, a few hours a day. What I realized in watching him be happy was that everybody was wrong about him. And what I needed was to take that happy kid back to regular life. And that could be the real Ryan. It wasn't just the ski Ryan and the school Ryan. The school Ryan was wrong about Ryan from the start. The doctors were wrong about Ryan from the start. I was wrong about Ryan from the start. My wife was wrong about Ryan from the start. I would have never seen it had we not gone skiing at Neshoba that day.
Sure. And that's where the book picks up pretty much. I mean, that whole explanation he gave was really a short introduction to what the first several chapters, which you get into in more detail. And I'll come back to that as well. Ryan, your memory of this is absolutely amazing, because you seem to remember so much. Now, for some of us, we make the joke about how we can't remember what happened yesterday, but dude, you got, like, your whole life is in there, man. What is that like? And then putting it on paper to be able to keep it. Again, some of us can't remember what happened yesterday.
It's honestly, it's fantastic, because in the life that I lead, it's really useful, because, like, great example. I was just with a couple of friends and we were talking about a climb at Cathedral Ledge, and I hadn't done it in like 2 years, and I can still remember every move. I can still remember what the crux foot feels like and how you shift your weight onto it. And it's a bit of a gift and a curse, because there's some stuff I don't want to remember that, like,
Sure.
I can still remember it and feel it like it happened yesterday. So it's, like I said, it's a gift and a curse, but I've always had this very unique memory that it works in sequence. So
Sure.
anything that goes in a chain of events where if I can remember one, it'll trigger the rest. It's almost like I have filing cabinets, and I
Sure.
flip through them by letter. And then when I pull on that letter, it'll expand hundreds of files. So
Sure.
song lyrics, climbing moves, the trails with the splits in order to get to like a ski line, or like all the trails at Loon Mountain, things of that sort. I can remember all that. But if you just give me a random date, like, hey, Ryan, on the 24th, you have this phone call, I need to put it in my calendar before I
Sure.
walk to the next room, because it's not
Okay.
connected to anything.
Yeah,
So, yeah. If you think about it, though, a life is just one long series of events. It's just one long sequence that you are constantly living in and adding to. So it made it easy for me to recall things for the book.
Absolutely, dude. And again, you both did a great job writing it. It's very easy to follow. It has so much extra information. Like, I'm running through now things I have had friends, ex-wife, girlfriends who were in the education system, were teachers. So a lot of what I saw at the beginning, like IEP, all this stuff, I know what that is, but not everybody might, man. You got it laid out in footnotes and Robert says, and then the story picks up and Ryan fills in that gap, man. Very accessible. Is that just the way it worked out, or was that the plan from the beginning?
I think I felt the need to write it that way. I mean, people always say you write like you talk. I just write like I'm telling the story. And if I was telling you the story, And you said, I just met Ryan. He seems like this most squared away kid. He's so bright. And I said, well, he was in a mental hospital. He was in these terrible schools and he was a kid. You'd say, how the hell did that happen? What went wrong? It really was just this little series of baby steps and bad decisions that we made early on. And if I didn't really explain each step, you'd think I was a terrible parent. And part of me says, yes, there were times when you could say I was a terrible parent for the decisions I made, but here's why this doctor said this, or here's why this teacher told us to do it this way, and why we thought it was the right move. And that's why I think it was worth explaining in that level of detail, because it's, it wasn't just one thing. It was just if I could piece back to this original story when a doctor visited Ryan's preschool. After day one, the preschool said, Ryan's different than the other kids. He doesn't want to play with the other kids. He's fixated with this big sink in the room. He just wants to fill the sink and watch it drain. And they were screening him out for autism at that point. They thought he may be autistic. So they had this pediatric neuropsychologist come and observe him. And after she observed him playing for a couple of hours, she met with my wife and I, and she took this yellow legal pad out and drew an oval and bisected the oval down the middle and said, Ryan's really smart in the left half of his brain and really weak in the right half of his brain. Now, how she could determine that after watching him play for a couple of hours, I have no idea. But it made sense given our profile and the way he sort of was as a little toddler. But that one little oval, dictated the next 10 years of his life. And so I think that's why in the book, it's important to lay out each step and say, we're just people. My wife and I are both lawyers. We're smart people. We were good parents. And look where we ended up. Look at the mistakes we made. Imagine poor people who are, single parents or didn't have the resources we did. How easily you could be led astray and end up in a really, really awful system. So I think that's maybe it was guilt is why I was explaining it so much, but I hopefully I did a good job explaining it.
It's weird too, because it's not even based on resources. It's education and the personality type to question things, which I probably got from him. But it's like, there's parents who could probably afford way more like intensive care than we could have even thought of, who like, if you just like told them this is the right thing to do, they'd just be like, yes, you're the experts. And they wouldn't ask. They would just assume that like it must not be working and they must need to go more intense with the kid because like they're only getting worse. They might not even have the type of personality to think, what if all these like wackos in the hospital are wrong? Like he keeps getting worse because what they're doing is wrong. Like that takes a certain type of person to question it. If you don't have that, like there's so many kids who probably could be doing fine, but are in like not good places just because they were unlucky to have parents who didn't question things. Like,
and that's a great point. And I wouldn't have questioned it, Ryan, unless I saw you ski. And once I saw you ski, I had evidence that you were different than everybody else thought. And I could go back to them and say, well, he's on a mountain. They wouldn't let him go to the bathroom at school without a teacher following him into the bathroom. And I would say, we just flew to Utah. We stayed in a hotel. He skied the whole mountain. I can't ski with him. So I had to leave him half the day on top of Snowbird, hope he'd find his way down. He's, 8, 9 years old, 10 years old. And he manages that. And then we stayed in the hotel and we flew back. Why can't this kid go to class like everybody else? To explain to me. So I had a little bit of evidence then, finally. And then my natural instincts took over. Like Ryan said, I questioned everything. I'm from Revere, so I doubt everybody. And I think everybody has an angle that they're trying to work me, So that's my nature took over finally.
You know what? I think that's one of the reasons I really got into the book was it wasn't an act of out and out defiance. Robert's just not being a dick just for the sake of being a dick. Pardon my language. Mm-hmm. He saw something. He asked the question. His wife asked the questions. Question everyone. I'm with that. And I've never even been to Revere, Massachusetts. I think I might have been there once, but I'm all about that. I'm all about questioning the system. I'm all about questioning the education system. I'm very big on that myself. So I was really connected with that. I was like, all right, I see it. I see what you're saying. And I see right. And you do this in the book too. And this actually comes back around near the end of the book. You don't fault or have any hatred or any, any bad feelings, no hard feelings towards the professionals because the professionals are doing their job. They're people. Your parents doing your job. You're just people. Ryan's just people. I'm just some dumb guy talking into a microphone. We're all just people. So these things can happen. But the beauty of it is that because you did see it, because you did question it, you ended up going on and figuring out, hey, I want my boy to do this. And then he does that. And then now there's this whole story of things that, it's really amazing. People, do you ever get, even to this day, when people are reading the book, when you tell the story, and Ryan, you can start with this one. Do people give you the stick? Like, are there hate? I mean, there's always haters, but are people like giving you any crap? Like, he's disabled, he's on the spectrum, he's blah, 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 stereotype this, stereotype that. Like, do people give you shit? Pardon my language.
No. And I think part of it is I haven't met people who knew the book before they knew me. So I'm a little bit of a chameleon, because it's just like, I don't lead my interactions with people like, hey, I'm Ryan. I was in a mental hospital this one time. Like,
totally.
Oh, I tried to jump out of a window to escape the mental hospital. And like, I lead with, just getting to know people, and then we climb together. And like, a lot of times I get to know people really fast through skiing and through climbing, through hiking, because you spend a lot of time in like intense situations where you have to communicate with each other. You're on adventures together. Sure. And sometimes you have 9 hours where all you have to do is talk to each other. So we know each other pretty well. And then this bombshell kind of gets dropped on them. And they're like, oh my God, like, how are you after going through all of this? I'm like, well, if you finish the book, I guess you'll find out. But
there you go. Sell a book.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I think if they form their opinion of me before they read it, it's a lot easier to kind of accept it.
Okay.
Interesting. But Tim, you make a great point. I mean, when we decided to write the book, I mean, Ryan, don't forget, was 17, I think, when I proposed this to him. And I knew I would expose myself to all the mistakes I made, and people would judge me as a parent. But I'm 50 years old, and I don't give a shit what they think of me. It's too late. I'm not going to change. But he was at a point in his life where he had now gone to college. He could have left all this in the rear view and buried it. And a few people in our town would have known, a few people in our family would have known what he went through, but that would have been it. He could have just gone on with his life. And to expose himself, to the whole story and say, this is what I went through and look where I am. The reason he did it, and I think, it's a testament to him, was because he thought other kids would benefit from hearing his story. And he was willing to expose himself to that kind of scrutiny. And it says a lot about him.
It says a lot about you both. Go ahead, Ryan. Were you about to say something?
Yeah. I mean, he kind of covered it, but it was like, that was kind of the thing. It's like, when you get to college, like, nobody knows who you are. And this is like one of the things when we talk about the book, like, when you live in a town, I went back to high school. I got back to public school after this long fight to get out of this system. And then everybody knew each other for so long. They thought I moved from a different town. And it was like, I always had to have this awkward exchange with people of like, oh, I didn't move. I'm from Sudbury. And they're like, oh, well, why haven't we seen you around here? And I'm like, I went to a different school. And they're like, oh, was it like a private school? I'm like, yeah, sort of. I try to play it off like I was smart.
Totally.
It was funny. They had this thing. I was in the Excel program, which was like for like you had a special homeroom where you went in and like you could do a study hall with like people sort of supervising. A lot of kids who had anxiety or depression were kind of in it.
Sure.
Excel was also the abbreviation for accelerated, which was like the smart kids classes.
Okay.
So like people would be like, oh, who's your psychology teacher? Because you also had to take a psychology class with the Excel class. Sure. I'm like, oh, it was Tracy Lopez. And like, I haven't heard of that teacher. And I'm like, oh, she does Excel psych. And they're like, I didn't even know they did Excel psych. I'm like, yeah, they do it,
Dude, that's so good.
You're really smart to get into it.
That's so good, dude. That is incredible.
It was just, I hated that because it's like, I'm making it sound like I'm super slick now, but I don't like to lie to people. I like to be genuine.
Sure.
And it was stressful to keep that lie up because I always had to be so conscious to not go too deep with people in case they would discover this thing. And when we did the book, I agreed to it, but like I had a lot of thoughts where I'm like, this could be the end of me. I could be looking back on my life like if it wasn't for that book, everything would have been out fine. And it came time to announce it. And it took me an hour to write the Instagram post. I went back and forth. I was like hovering over the button for 20 minutes of the hour. And then I pushed it and I just watched so much positivity come through. it really took some weight off of my shoulders. And I want to like have other people know this, because it's like, it's so easy to perceive it through your own lens because you judge yourself the most harshly. And I was looking through the eyes of myself being my worst critic, of just like, oh my God, all this happened to you. What's wrong with you? Are you like a crazy person? You're so different. Like you'll never fit in. And I kind of projected that onto every other person before I'd even heard their own thoughts. Sure. And their thoughts were all positive, of like, oh my God, I can't believe you overcame that. You know, that's so special. So just like take some weight off of your shoulders. Like people aren't going to judge you for what you went through. And if they do, they're weirdos and they probably got their own shit going on.
Yeah, dude, 100% agree. Love it. Love your thought process on that. I personally am not a judging person. I don't care. I have a past. We all do. You know, who cares? Whatever. I don't care. You're extreme Ryan to me. What do I know? I read the book. You're the guy who signed my book. It's so cool. That's right, everybody. Another signed copy to add to the shelf. I have 5 now. Awesome. Not 5 of this print book, just 5 of different books. Anyway, I mean, I could do 5 of this. That'd be cool.
I got a box of them if you know more. Don't just say the word.
Yes. Awesome. But that's, again, I agree with you 100%. And I'm glad it's been a positive experience, because it can be a positive experience more and more. You know, and there's so many different things you could take out of it, because it's not just about what Ryan does. And again, they've gone into bits and pieces, and I'm not going to spoil every single piece because I want you to read the book, because it's a great story. But there's other things you can take out of it. Like I said, if you're a New England nerd, New England's all about it. If you know, it has, you know, this run, that run from out west, this run, that one from us down south, this one, that run from Antarctica, a place most of us will never even think about going, especially me. I get seasick. Dude, let me tell you something. There was one part of this book, I don't want to forget this because it made me laugh, but I'm reading about your first night on the boat, and I was getting seasick reading it because you were talking about other people getting seasick. So that's how good the book is. It puts you right in the moment, because I was sitting there like, oh, dude, no, close this for a minute. No.
When you're on the boat, you kind of come out of the Beagle Channel, which is this calm water, and it happens about like 10:30 after you've had lots of dinner, and it lulls you into this false sense of security. And as soon as you pass Cape Horn, I remember just watching my feet go what looked like 4 feet above my head while I was laying in bed. Sure. And I'm like, oh God, it's starting, and it doesn't stop, dude. It's so funny, like, because we went back to Antarctica. This isn't in the book, unfortunately. I wish it was. But Volume 2. I got invited to tail guide on that trip, and it's just like you think about, like, you know, your heroes become your friends. Like, sure. I was laying on the couch, like, so seasick. And like Chris Davenport walks by and shakes me awake, and it's just like, hey man, you okay? You want a Dramamine? It's like, this is like this guy who's like skied all the 14ers in the year, just this incredible athlete, and he's like, you know, like, hey man, you doing all right? Like, can I help you out?
Totally. And the thing with Davenport is, I saw him speak once. I was in the same bar watching him say something. He was doing a presentation, and he was talking about the Everest climb. And I'm like, bro, I can't even go to the top of Mount Washington without getting a headache. I can't talk to this guy about anything. And let me tell you something. These guys in this book, and that's another part of it. Again, it's not just one story. It's a ton of stories. These guys are adventurers. They've been everywhere. And I remember this past year, Dan Egan's like, hey, are you going to be able to make the Hall of Fame out in Big Sky? I was like, probably not, because I have to be there for 3 extra days because town is at 8,000 feet. And I found out about altitude while I was living in Nevada. I was like, whoa, altitude sickness is a very real thing. Very real. In the adventure that you guys take, it's like, it seems like you guys are just bouncing all over the place. How the hell do you do that? Either of you can answer that. I know I kind of bounce topics here, but since we're just going at it. I'll do it
from my perspective. It's almost an embarrassment. I mean, I'm like the Forrest Gump of skiers, because I've just been around the world's greatest skiers through really through accident and happenstance somewhat. I mean, but it really one led to the other. We started with a guide in Big Sky, who's a big part of the story. His name's Ben Brousseau. And Ben took Ryan down Big Couloir, and he was the first guide who didn't question his size or his age. He looked at Ryan and said, "What do you want to ski, Big Couloir? Let's do it. Let's go do it." And Ben became an integral friend, and that led us down to Chile with the NASTIC group. We met Chris Fellows, who's a legendary instructor. That eventually led to meeting Davenport, and Davenport introduced us to the concept of Antarctica. And then we circle back with Ben and end up in Antarctica. We meet Doug Stout. John Egan's on the trip. We eventually meet Dan Egan, and I've skied with all of these guys. I'm an intermediate skier. I'm a pretty good skier. I've just had this, whirlwind of experience with these legendary people. But from a dad standpoint, each one of them that I met, they all said the same thing. I was a kid like Ryan. I was a kid that couldn't sit still. I was a kid that just wanted to ski. I wanted to get out of the classroom. I was misunderstood. And I was particularly John Egan, and it really was relatable to me and said, you know what? Ryan's not just going to be okay. I've got him out of this terrible system. He's found this thing he likes. He can do this for a living. This could be his career, and he's going to see the world and take clients up these places because these guys are doing that. And I'm one of those clients. So it's been a cool run for me as well, but I'll let Ryan chime in from his side of the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think that covers it. My answer's a little shorter, but it really, it's a lot about just like the people you meet and these connections, because like each one along the way really gave me the integral pieces of being a good skier, and they also opened my eyes to things that I wasn't thinking about. Like, you can't find some of this stuff with a Google search. It's just like, what? People ski in Antarctica? Like, how do you do that? And then like, oh yeah, there's this and this person, and then the trip runs at this time, and like the ladder goes further and further into oblivion the further you go, because now it's like I recently just came back from Baffin Island, and like there's not even a trip that goes there. You have to get your own plane, and you have to contact like locals on the ground to snowmobile you in and leave you on the ice, and someone who can get you a gun because there's polar bears. Like, all of these experiences, each place has like a person who like that's their thing. They go there, or they know how to do it. And it's so weird when you start chasing the ski dream, you're just going to start meeting these people. And the more opportunities you say yes to, the more things you learn about that you didn't know were there.
And that Baffin trip was Brennan Lagasse, who we met on the Antarctica trip. And Todd Offenbacher, and Ryan ended up with Andrew Eisenstarker and Todd and Angela Hawes, these legendary instructors in Svalbard. So, it all starts with this one day at Neshoba, and it ends, he's been in the North Pole and the South Pole, basically. He skied all over the world, and it's because of these people.
Neshoba, but it really starts with Ben, because, we wouldn't know about Antarctica if we didn't go to Portillo, and we wouldn't have known about Portillo if we didn't meet Ben. I think it's like I could totally see a scenario where, like, if we don't get Ben on that day, I probably would ski pretty hard. I was always into performance, but like the ski safari of the world thing probably doesn't happen, or if it does, it happens to a much smaller degree or in a different way. And it's cool because it's not like it was a stepping stone. Ben has been a part of that ride for pretty much all of it. He got to come on that second trip that we just did where I was tail guiding, and he was with Dad, and that was a cool victory lap, like this person who's been such a huge part of my whole teenage into adult life got to come see Antarctica, That was wicked.
And Tim, you probably have a lot of instructors that listen to this, but we had hired an instructor in Snowbird, and it was a disaster. We had hired an instructor at Jackson Hole, and it was somewhat of a disaster. And then the only reason I probably would have given up on hiring somebody, but he wanted to ski Big Couloir, and I couldn't do it. I wasn't at that level, and you needed to go with a partner. So I knew his only chance of doing this, and he was 12 years old at the time, was to hire somebody. And I called the ski school, and I didn't want to give away too much, but I said, my son's a little complicated. I need the right guy. And they give us Ben, and
his favorite word, complicated.
Complicated. That's using that term loosely. Complicated
awesome.
Ryan ended up with Ben that day, and Ben, they did one or two practice runs, and they ended up doing Big Couloir, and that was it. And that, that level of trust just developed right off the bat. And Ben, I just had a real, I think, instinctive ability to look at a kid and say, you know what, if he says he can do it, and I watch him, I think he can do it. Why shouldn't he try it? What are we doing here if we're not going to take risks? Because this is why we love this sport. It's that thrill. It's risk, within a defined system and making good choices. But, he took a look at Ryan, and Ryan was as good as any 45-year-old going down that. So what if he's 12 years old? And that was the difference, I think, with Ben and other instructors we'd met.
And that's another amazing part of the story. With any story, and you learn this in film studies classes, is where I learned it. And I don't go into it much, but what interpretation, what can someone take away from it? And you start reading, about Ryan, how he's having his issues, but at the same time, once you're on snow and you get to that part of the story, it's this whole other positive vibe. I don't mean to use the word vibe, but for lack of a better word, it's this whole positive vibe. And for me personally, he's 12 out skiing this stuff. I didn't even put skis on till I was 12, and I was skiing down in Brattleboro on our local hill. What do I know? But man, the whole story, it feels negative for a moment, and then you start to get it. You start to all right, there was some negative things, which is just life, whatever. It really just a story of, I don't want to say everyday story because, I don't want to take away from it, but, just people doing people-y things. And this one just happens to revolve around skiing and Tora Bright dancing on a table on a boat. I couldn't get over that story myself, bro.
That's right.
Since we were name dropping before, I had that one sticks in my head. I love her. I always have.
Yeah, she's great.
Oh,
she's
it's so
super
cool
fun.
that you know her.
Nice. Yeah, so nice. Great.
Dude, she's from my era.
Yeah. We didn't know who she was. I had to Google her. We heard she was on the trip, and I was like,
really?
She's won a gold medal. She's a big deal. Holy cow. And
Totally.
Couldn't have been nicer.
She's
nice.
from my era. I'm closer in age to your dad than you, Ryan. I'm 44. So that whole era and the era prior to that, all right, let's do some more name dropping. Screw it. I knew Kelly Clark before anybody else knew who she was. All right, that's an exaggeration. She was at Mount Snow. I worked at Mount Snow. I grew up in Southern Vermont. We nodded. We said hello. We all knew who she was. Damn, she's really good. And then we're driving around in our cars a few years later. Hey, she just won a gold medal too. I was like, holy shit, look at that. Hometown amazing. Hero. Anyway, enough of the silly stuff, the name dropping, because I could do it all day. That's my favorite dumb bit. It was you're really a name dropper. I'm like, no, it's so much fun for me. Now I get to name drop these two as well. But anyway, the positive part of the story, and it really does, I don't mean to take away from it, so don't misunderstand, but by the time you get to Antarctica, you've almost forgotten the first half of the story. Here's this kid who was going through the system. He has his issues. His parents are trying to deal with it. Professionals trying to deal with it. Everything, whatever. Please pardon if you can hear the thunder. I don't mean for that to get on the microphone. I tried. But you go through this, but then you get to Antarctica. You've totally forgotten. It's now just an adventure story. Now, that can't be life for either of you. You obviously are never going to forget. But at the same time, does it kind of feel like that? You've now moved from all of that. And you did touch on this earlier in the interview, but in the book, it seems presented like that, yet, you guys can't forget. Do you understand what I'm saying? Can you answer that? Because I'm not even sure I'm asking the right question.
I'll take a shot. I think one of the parts of the book, when you get to Antarctica, by that point, from a ski standpoint, he's gone from point A to point Z, and there's no stopping him. Sure. Life was still, anybody's life. At this point, we finally got Ryan back to public school. He was in Lincoln Sudbury High School. That was no picnic either, because now, not for the reasons before he wasn't being restrained, he was off all medication. We had sort of come to the point where we realized he was just a regular kid, and all the decisions before were incorrect. But he still had to show up every day at a public high school, make friends, try to find a girlfriend. All of those things we all go through. You want to fit in, you want to be cool. That's a stressful existence, and he had no ramp up time for that. He just all of a sudden gets plopped into public school and said, "Go make some friends," and so. There were days that were tough. There was, especially that junior year, it wasn't that easy. So I think you're right. There was, in the metaphor of skiing, there's some days that aren't perfect. There's some days you do fall down, you have to get back up. So what do you think?
Totally.
It was definitely like that. I guess I'll try and take a crack at what I think your question was. I mean, no, you don't forget the beginning because it's all the pieces that build a human. I don't think I would appreciate things the way I do if I didn't come from that place of darkness. And it's tricky because he's right, and you forget about that. Like until now, I don't think the parts of my life, the ski and the home, ran synonymously. I did have that moment of like I was sitting in Atlanta, like getting ready to do the next flight to Argentina to then go to Antarctica. It's a long travel. And I was just like kind of hunched over my phone, kind of sad because we had senior dress up day and everybody else had a group and you go in like a teams of like a themed costume. Like everyone will go as like the Super Mario characters or everyone will go as like, I don't know, all the mean girls, something like that. And I didn't have a team. And I went in all my ski gear and, made it look like I was about to alpine climb the school and then like, ski off the roof. But
been awesome.
That was fun. People liked it. But deep down, I'm like, damn, like, I'm not part of that. I don't have a crew. And it's weird. It's just like you look at it. It's easy to look at that from that perspective of how could you want anything else in life? You get to do all these amazing things, but it's just like, there's still that part of you when you're a teenager that's like, I want to be normal. I love what I have. I'll like never sacrifice this craft that I've spent so long building for anything. But like, man, you do want to be normal sometimes. And wish you could, you wish it would translate. It's like, I didn't grow up in a ski town. Mm-hmm. Ski in Antarctica didn't get you anything. The kid who can throw a football on the field that's in our town, is so much cooler than me in our town.
That's awesome. That's exactly you hit it right what I was going for. Which awesome. Thank you. My goodness. Oh, you guys should have held out for a better interviewer. My God.
No, that's great.
But yeah, no, you hit it. And that's another big part of the story that I do love is you go through what Ryan went through, but then you go through what Ryan went through, what we all go through when we're in that god awful hole. High school, and we all have our own experiences. Some are similar for different reasons. Some are different. I went to a school with 40 kids graduating. That's a big difference. My sister graduated with 8 kids. It's even smaller school. So,
that comes with its own challenges.
Oh, totally. It does. But you overcame, you adapted. You've done better than some people. Like some people fold under pressure. Other people, they love it. I don't know why. I'm one or the other. Actually, I don't think I was ever a folder under pressure. Even really, I just got angry quickly. Whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm good now. Fun. Tim, the fun guy.
Exactly.
But
you found something you love and you're good at it. And I think with Ryan was once he found that skiing, he was the easiest kid in the world to parent. He went from the hardest to the easiest because he had a passion and he had something to strive for. I mean, I have a daughter who's Ryan's sister, is 15, 16 months younger. And, she's led a much more traditional life, much more traditional path, private school, good college, the whole nine. But she's, I think she's found something she's into, but I'm not 100% sure yet. So I find myself worrying much more about her than I do him. So it's one of the lessons, if you find something and you love it and do it every day.
I'm a little more sure about her. I don't know.
It's getting there too.
It'll depend what she gets, but like, nobody like goes into ecology to like make their parents happy. If she was like, oh, I'm just going to be a lawyer, I'd be like, oh no. Yeah. But like, she's always been into animals.
Yep.
I was terrified of dogs as a kid, and I don't know why. And she wanted a living thing that could walk in our house. Didn't care what it was, a dog, a cat, a hamster, since we were like 3. So she's on the right track, I think.
Awesome. I love animals, so I 100% support it. What's interesting, though, and you brought up how, in the town you lived in, the guy who's skiing Antarctica isn't as cool as the quarterback. Okay. In a ski town, obviously that is going to change. And you were coming up like for example, you were coming up in the early 2000s, so the internet was just getting there. You know, you started your YouTube channel. I kind of felt like it was back at the beginning, back when the internet was not the Wild West like it was back in my day in the late 90s, where, good Lord, I've seen things I can't unsee, and you know. Oh, it's awful what's bouncing around in here. It's terrible. The internet's an awful place, dude. Everybody stay away from it, except for SkeerX Media and SkeerXmedia.com. Check that out. But do you think if you came along later, like for instance, you all know who Kai Jones is. He was 11 years old, and everybody in the world knew who he was. He was the coolest thing on two skis, but he come along later. Do you think if you come along later, your experience, at least from the celebrity part of it, do you think that would have changed at all?
No, because Kai Jones was 11 when I was 18, and he was already so much better than me. And that's part of why he got famous. You know, it's like There's all the tactics. There's like, you know, there's algorithms, and there's just persistence, and there's being a good writer. And it's just, you can do all the tricks. But at the end of the day, 90% of the reason people aren't getting sponsored, aren't getting famous, is because they don't have the athletics to back it up. He had that really, and I've never talked about this. There was like a very weird moment of just silent tension of like the day I got to Big Sky when we skied the Little Couloir, and this was before I'd skied it. For a while, I thought I was going to be the youngest person to do it. And I saw an Instagram post on the plane, and it was Kai when he was 11 skiing the Little Couloir. And I'm just like, oh my God, if we don't do it this trip and this 11-year-old kid has skied it, like it's going to hurt my soul a little bit. And like, happy for him. You know, it's not a competition for me. I wanted to ski it because it was my dream. If it happened when I was 49, I would have held it in the same regard. Yeah. But at the same time, it was just like, oh my God, this kid like can't even walk to the store by himself. Like, and he's skied the thing I'm dreaming about. That's messed up. You know,
he's nasty, that kid. Not gonna lie, but that's subjective, because I'm reading this book and I'm like, dude, I couldn't imagine at 12 doing what you were doing, at 15 doing what you were doing, at 18 doing what you were doing. Now, I make a lot of self-deprecating jokes about not being good. I'm decent. I can keep up with most folks. I stay off moguls because my knees hurt too much, and I stay out of the trees because I say there's no such thing as luck, but sometimes I believe in that there is. But I will ski trees now and again. Then I see what you're doing. I'm like, holy smokes, this kid was born for this, according to the story. Now, that's his dad's story, so it could be embellished. I don't know.
It's not. I wish it was. I mean, I think if we come up in a ski town and he raced, you know, he would have gotten to be a more technically proficient skier quicker. I mean, he learned by watching my terrible technique, which was awful, and he self-taught himself much better. And then we got better coaching as he got into some of the travel. But even back then, I thought I might lose him to the park, because the park kids with these, you know.
There was never
but I was so glad when I didn't. But even in the beginning, he just loved going where nobody else was going. We would go to Loon, and he would cut through these little patch of trees and end up in this shitty little run, cutting through bushes, and he'd come out 10 minutes later and he'd be so happy. And I'd be like, why wouldn't you want to stay in this beautiful open groomer and go 100 miles an hour? Isn't this so much more fun than what you're doing? No, he wanted to just go where other people either couldn't go or just weren't going. And from every mountain we went to, that was your goal, to really ski where most people couldn't go. I think that's just part of your personality. It's more of an explorer type personality.
I would say I was born to be an adventurer. You know,
there you go.
There's kids who grow up and they play doctor. There's kids who grow up and they play house. I was the kid. I was like, cool. I wanna go to Mars when I grow up. I want to fly fighter jets when I grow up. And it was like, it was gonna be something. And I happened to land on skiing. But it's just like, I always like the draw of the unknown pulled me in a way that I couldn't run away from. When I saw a single track going into the woods, and, you know, when you're 7, the backcountry of Loon Mountain looks huge. You know, now I've scratched every inch of it, and it feels like a neighborhood to me now. But when you look out at the ski area boundary not patrolled sign, and you see tracks going there, and you look out at the wilderness of the White Mountains and you're like, how far do those go? The curiosity pulls you, but then there's the fear of like, what happened if I got lost back there? What if I find something that I don't know how to tangle with? What if, I end up on a huge cliff? The balance of the fear and the pull of the exploration was always just something that I danced between. And
Sure.
as I grew older and I started to learn tactics to deal with things, then you start getting comfortable with more unknown. You're like, okay, whatever I think I could find out there, I have all the tools to deal with it now. When I was 7, I didn't. Now that I'm 12, I have this many. Now that I'm 20, I have this many. Now you put me in like where I am now, I'm like, cool. Any patch of snow that I want to ski, I'll find a way to ski it. I'll rappel into it. I'll rappel out of it. I don't know if I need to nail pitons or an ice screw or like sling a tree to make the anchor. I don't know if I'm going to have to like, wedge the tails of my skis and like walk down under this chockstone. But like,
Sure.
I think I could ski any patch of snow that I want to. Whether or not the conditions are right when you want that is, like, up for that moment. But when they're right, that's what I like to do. And that was kind of what separated me from Kai and from some of these other people, is that I was never the kid who jumped off of things. I was never the kid who was going to do the best trick in the park, was going to, lace the gates the fastest. I was a really good explorer, and I just had a mind for it. I just craved exploration, and I could put a turn anywhere. I might not link the turns in the most cleanest, most beautiful way that's going to be cool to watch on film, but no matter what slope you put me on, if skis fit, I'll find a way to put a turn on it. So that's my thing,
Love it. Love it. And to reiterate, he knows how to do this. So don't anybody think he's just willy-nilly throwing himself off the side of a mountain. And that's part of the story too. And that's the part that leads into the future, man. How's education?
Oh man, that's a great question. How is education? It's really interesting. I love my outdoor ed program so much. I quote it all the time. Now that I'm kind of out guiding this summer, I find myself just using things we learned, the ideas of why we need all of these things I was just talking about: exploration, adventure, nature, and why it's worth it to take the risk. I find myself walking down hills to these cliffs and talking to parents about rock climbing, and I'm just like, this is a great thing for kids because it's perceived risk, and it's if it's done right, it looks dangerous and feels dangerous, but it's not. The drive to the trailhead is probably way more dangerous, and the words I just gave you, I couldn't have articulated those words without the outdoor ed program.
Sure.
That was the benefit of it. I knew those things just kind of in my mind, but being able to vocalize them, that's what you learn in a program like that. The downside is that it's a liberal arts school. There's gen eds. I'm going to have to take a guitar class this fall to graduate with a degree in outdoor ed. And
interesting.
I love music. It's fascinating to me. I'm not somebody who makes music.
Yeah,
so,
I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
And also the way that my life has progressed. Like school is like, I look at it like I look at a challenging ski line. I have to break it into these like obstacles and hit it like a strike mission. Like, oh, we need to get up and down this mountain before the sun hits it, because the last 2 semesters, I've lost at least 3 weeks of school, both times over the exam period. Sure. For life-changing expeditions. And these are not like, oh, I just want to go skiing. It's like, my life will be in a vastly different place after this expedition, whether it's like things I learn, whether it's like just experiences, like how I'll feel after having seen and done that. And the fact of just scarcity, that like if I pass it up, it might never happen again. So I find myself doing all of my school doubled up so I can get it done a month early, and like making bargains with teachers and having to drop things and then take them in the next semester. So I haven't had a typical college experience, but I'm grateful for what I've gotten out of it.
And it's an atypical parenting experience on the college side. When your kid calls and says, Dad, I can go to Baffin Island. Cody Townsend's going to be on the trip. And, we're going to have this, adventure. And, by the way, but I'm going to miss exams. But I think I can make it happen if I, but, like, you sure you can make it? How are you going to do this? No, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. So he always finds a way. And so sometimes you got to just trust. And if the worst thing was he had to take an extra class, trust me, the Baffin Island trip he's going to remember a lot more than he's going to remember, English 101 or whatever the heck you're taking.
I was going to say, Baffin Island's one of those places a lot of people couldn't even tell you where it is.
I couldn't.
And you get to go. That's awesome. Yeah, to heck with school. I didn't say that, but yes, I did.
No, he should. It's you learned a lot more on that trip, I'm sure. You want to talk about it at all? What was it like? What did you learn?
Yeah, what was it like? Go for it. Baffin Island. Let's get a scoop.
Oh my God, I could do a whole podcast just on that. Essentially, the way I'll explain it, so it's in the Arctic. It's an island, not at the tippity top of Canada, but the next one down from the tippity top on the east coast.
Sure.
It's a fjord, which are these sort of glacial features where water kind of goes into the mountains. It's seawater. So it's like, imagine if you had Alaskan mountains, but like on Cape Cod. Okay. That's kind of what it's like. And these mountains are particularly special because they're all very steep, very clean granite faces. Somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 feet. So we're talking like the things people drive out to Yosemite in huge campers and pay park fees just to look at.
Sure.
There are twice as many as there are in Yosemite and bigger. And they don't even have names. And between these rock features are clean couloirs. And it's like you think of the couloirs in the world and you're like, okay, like there's longer ones. There's like the stuff in Chamonix, but like the Chamonix stuff, it's glaciated and it has rappels. These are just snow. They're just snow hallways that you just have to walk up and ski down. And they go right to the ocean. So there's no approach. It's as steep at the start as it is at the top, and it stays that way the whole way.
Wow, dude.
A lot of them are north facing, so they don't get sun affected even when the sun's warm. So they stay permanently good snow. So you're either going to ski chalk or powder. You're just like literally you're balancing. Do I want to rip this thing? Like just pin the fall line and just enjoy this good snow? Or do I want to ski it in hop turns so I can look at these walls while I'm doing it? The drawbacks, it's nearly impossible to get to unless you have just a logistical house of cards where if you pull one, the whole trip comes down. And you have to sleep next to one of the greatest North American predators, the polar bear.
Yeah. That's my thing.
We dealt with that in Svalbard, but not like this. Like, it's weird to be climbing huge mountains, and the most scared you are is when you lay your head to rest at night in the tent.
Because a damn polar bear going to come out and take care of you.
Yeah. And we had Andy with us. He was our Inuit guide, and he had hunted polar bears. Sure. And I'm like, okay, like, on that Svalbard trip, we had Todd. I'm sure Todd's a great shot, but like if I got someone who's got polar bear bodies on them, like man, that's who I want defending me.
So when you run into a black bear then here in New England, it's not such a big deal anymore. You pet that thing like a dog.
Yeah. Oh, I've run into a black bear in New England. Right?
Oh, so have I.
I was close enough that I could hear it breathing, and it ran away from me.
Yeah. It's a whole different.
Polar bear's not going to do that.
No. I tell people that all the time. Like, what about the bears? Like, what about them? We got black bears. So what? It's not like we got grizzly bears or polar bears. Man, you get to see all the cool stuff. That was something else in the book, actually. While I have it in mind, who was it and who said it to who? I can't remember. Something about just take a look around. Or make sure you look around.
Andrew Eisenstark is a pretty legendary guide. That was addressed to me because I would whine the whole way up in Antarctica, and I would start complaining and asking for how much longer.
Good boy.
He would just yell back, don't forget to look around. And he's right. I mean, you look around and Antarctica is just, it's silent, and there's just the icebergs move and the penguins, you hear some squawking, but that's about it. And it's just mesmerizing. And if you don't enjoy the going up, you're missing half of it. It's not the 2 minutes down, because the runs are short going down. It's a couple hours up that you should enjoy more than anything. And it took me till the second trip. Honestly, we went back this last time, and I'm a little lighter than I was the first trip, and I trained a little harder, and I enjoyed it much better. So Ryan could attest to
There's that, but there's also the biggest thing was your mindset was different.
Yeah, it's true.
Because
right.
It's just, for starters, I mean, I don't think we climbed enough mountains for you to even know how it feels. Like,
yep.
I think it's very easy when you have that excuse of like, oh, I'm just out of shape, to look at everybody else and be like, they don't even feel this. This is just easy, and I'm the only one this is hard for. Like, I hate going uphill too.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, if you feel sweaty, you feel smarmy, you are thinking about like, oh my God, it's so much longer from the top. You're thirsty, you're stripping off layers and you're putting them back on. It's not comfortable. But if you can accept that it's not comfortable and accept that the discomfort's temporary, now all of a sudden you have a new space. Because when you're skiing, you look at things like a million miles an hour. When you're walking up, you have enough time to process, oh my God, that iceberg, look at how weird it's shaped and it's so blue. Like, you take in that stuff more.
Yep.
And I think once you knew that, and for him, it was like, that was such a passion trip. He talked about it for like a year leading up to it. And we had to bring triples of every piece of gear. The bags were like 100 pounds because he just didn't want to even face the possibility of losing something and not getting to ski. And it was cool because I've never seen him get that way about skiing before. And I could tell that the place had an impact on him.
Yeah.
And he was just so excited to have the opportunity to be back there. He did more runs than we did.
Yeah,
I mean, granted, I was with a client group and they had different, goals. But I'm like, you did 3 laps today? Like, that's like the most vert you've ever done. And he wasn't even like, oh my God, it sucked. He was like, it was great. We could have done more.
Yeah, no, it's worth it. I'd go back again. I mean, if it was, wasn't so damn expensive, I'd go back every year. But it's not a trip you can take, once in a lifetime kind of trip. We happen to do it twice because Ryan got the guide the second time. Ryan, I'm sure will go back multiple times. I hope I go back again one more time. Would be great for me.
If 4 of you want to reach out to me in any way, I'm sure we'll plug the socials at the end of this.
It's true. If anyone's listening and they want to go,
anybody wants to go to Antarctica, no like extensive ski resume is necessary. If you like walking uphill and like skiing downhill, you can hire me, and if I get 4 of you, I get to go on the trip for free. So there's that option.
I wouldn't be surprised if you might. I would love to say my audience is so extensive that you will definitely get it. I can't say that guaranteed, but man, you definitely got a few people thinking or listening to this right now, like, I could not buy the new Bronco and I can go do this.
Exactly. That's about it. Yep.
Shout out to those who did buy it. Yep. And I mean, I would go, it's too much of a trip for me. I know my limitations. I hate flying and I get seasick wicked bad, not to mention altitude sickness. Believe me, I'm a mess. I loved how somebody in the book, one of the other, brought up something about use the word constitution. I had to chuckle because mine is weak. I got it in the brain minus the memory. It's the body that's not. The spirit is willing, but the body is a mess. So,
even locally, and a lot of New Englanders listen to this. I mean, Ryan, if you ever have questions about the presidential range, this kid knows every single inch of every trail. I mean, it's incredible what he's done locally. And when you watch the videos, and most people have seen Tuckermans or done Tuckermans, have gone up there once. There's what I've discovered through him is there's 10,000 other runs you could do that nobody really knows. So I mean, he's your guy locally as well.
All right. So here's the question then. Tuckerman Ravine is famous. I've never done it. I hear so many different things. I've had people like, dude, I can go rock that tomorrow. And that's what they've heard. I've heard people say it's wicked dangerous. Don't even bother. And I had a friend of mine tell me about how when they just did the hike and was throwing up at the top of the hike. So, shout out Alex. Yeah. It was a good story. What is it really like? Let's get the first hand. Like I've talked to people. I want you to tell me because you're the guide, not just some dude.
Tuckerman Ravine. I mean, it's hard to say that any other way. You know, it giveth and it taketh away. Like, it depends on the day you're there. It has moods. Those moods are extreme. This year, Mount Washington, the summit, which is about maybe 700 feet higher than the top of Tuckerman Ravine, was the coldest place on Earth. It had a negative 108-degree wind chill. And for those who, like, I don't even know how to explain that to people. Like, if it was 108 degrees outside, you could die from overheating. Now put that in reverse. Go to 0, think about how cold you are in 0, then add that to 108. No one of us have ever felt that. And if we did, we wouldn't live to tell the tale.
No.
2 weeks later, we were laying on rocks in beautiful sunshine with no wind, and we're like thinking about taking our shirts off. So you can't mess with the weather on that mountain, but the weather isn't always bad. It can be so nice. It can be such a friendly place. You just have to pick your days. I personally think most people ski Tuckerman Ravine way too late in the season. I think around mid-March, it starts to peak. We get longer high-pressure windows. So the snow stability is a little bit more frequent. The sun is stronger, so you start to get the corn snow, which is soft. You can ski it in midwinter snow, but it's kind of that wind-hammered chalk you might have felt at like the top of Jay Peak, or if you've been out west, Kirkwood has a lot of that. Maybe like Palisades, like you'll feel it. That can be a little bit scary on the steep runs in Tuckerman Ravine because they are steeper than anything you'll do in the resort. When you get the sun effect from the corn, it has a little bit more bite to it. You can push the snow around. If you fall on it, it's more forgiving. That thing has a remarkable way of spitting people out in the most violent ways when they fall and not having them sustain any injuries. People just get up, and that's why we have so many videos that are funny and not scary.
Sure.
The walk-in, it's a bit of a walk, but like I said, if you do it when in like March or early April, there's still snow all the way to the parking lot.
Yeah.
So you can ski in, or you can walk up with your ski boots on, and then you can ski all the way to the bottom. When you do it in May, it's this really novel thing. But the problem is you're now walking with your skis and your boots on your back, and you're finishing your skiing, and then you're walking back down, and all of a sudden you feel like you've hiked a section of the Appalachian Trail. It's like it's kind of grueling. Like, I start thinking about rock climbing when it gets like that.
Sure.
So yeah, that's kind of my stance on it. I think the head wall is really hyped. If you're a timid skier, you should ski right gully or left gully, maybe lobster claw if you're like really getting into it. That still counts. Those are still like a valid tick of Tuckerman Ravine if you want to like go, you did it. But if you want the head wall, it's one of the few things that's that steep that you can ski carving turns and not hop turns on. And the long leg, short leg is insane. You feel like your uphill knees in your chest and your downhill leg might run away from you. If you have the skill and the know-how to ski that, it's a run that you'll always remember. There's a reason it's so classic. That's my spiel.
Fair enough. When I'm ready to do it and my friends are ready to do it, we're going to call you and have you take a look first. And then you can tell us how bad we are, and then you can decide if we could survive it or not.
Lots of resources, too, for other listeners. If you're thinking about going, go to Mount Washington Avalanche Center and just read the report. Maybe even read a couple reports from a few days before, because it'll tell you what's happening in the moment, but sometimes you can identify a trend. So like if yesterday it was high, then the next day it was considerable. Now today it's moderate. And it's going to be sunny with no wind, but not super hot sunny for the next 3 days. And on the third day you're thinking of going, it's probably going to keep trending to low. But if it's continuously gone up, if it was low yesterday, now it's moderate and a huge snowstorm's coming in, it's probably going to go to considerable or high. So look at the reports, identify the trends, please check the weather, bring layers you don't think you're going to need, and just like be ready for a day out.
Cool. I love it, man. I love it. I don't know anything about that world, really. But that's why I'm in this, is to learn stuff. I'm not going to go pro like you are, and you have been in many ways. And again, read the book, everybody, Without Restraint, How Skiing Saved My Son's Life. And you can get all into Robert and Ryan's story. And then if you're scared to do things in New England, you call Ryan up, he'll take you out and he'll show you how to do it. Just make sure you bring your checkbook. The boy's not working for free. We're not doing that. Except unless you want to do free for me, and that's different, whatever.
Yes, you're free.
All right, boys, let's do some plugs. Without Restraint, How Skiing Saved My Son's Life. Available in all the usual places, I assume.
Everywhere. Yep. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, local bookshops. The audiobook is out as well. If you're not a reader, and honestly, I'm more of an audiobook guy myself. I listened to it. I thought it was great. There's the two narrators. There's a Rob and there's a Ryan, and I think they did a nice job, and they're a little more dramatic than we are when we read it. They're professionals at it. It's very listenable, and it's a good one, and it's on Kindle and every other place. Did I forget any, Ray?
It's hard to forget anywhere. I mean, it'd be harder to find a shop or like a online thing that you'd expect to sell books that doesn't sell it. Yep. We're not in certain store locations, or like if you have like a niche bookstore, we're probably not going to be in there, but like anywhere you could think to find it on the internet, you're going to find it.
Yep. I'll drop it off at your house if you want. I'm available.
There you go.
Deliver
Give the man something to do, everybody.
Exactly.
Just make sure you have coffee if you want. If you want coffee, whatever you want.
Exactly.
You want a beer, whatever you want. I don't know. I quit drinking.
Yep.
There you go. Who doesn't love autographs? I love autographs. I got them both. Yep. So there you go. Any social kind of stuff, websites, anything you want to get out there, kids?
More him than me.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at extreme_Ryan_DeLena. And that's where you'll get the most of me. I post stories, what I'm doing the day of, and then I do kind of longer posts where I'll, do highlights. If you just want to flip through the photos, I usually put the caption as what it is. If you want to know everything about it, you can push that more tab and you're going to get about 5 paragraphs. I do YouTube too, just Ryan DeLena. There's like a few other Ryan DeLenas, but like I'm the one that like does ski things. You can, if you want to watch like sort of longer, like 10-minute kind of narrative style edits of like the stuff we do, you can see those. And you can even, if you're reading the book right now or plan on reading it, you can still find videos of stuff we talk about in the book from like years ago. I haven't taken them down, so you can kind of follow along for my visual people. And then lastly, if you want to read trip reports and things of that sort, you can find me on Substack as just Ryan DeLena. I have a free subscription open because I don't feel important enough to charge you money to read things I write.
Love it.
So, yeah.
I will say quick. I'm not as prolific on social media, but I can be found pretty easily, Robert DeLena, on Instagram or on Facebook. I have heard from a lot of parents, and that's why I bring it up, of struggling kids. And it's been really rewarding. It's stressful sometimes to hear those stories and offer advice because, I mean, I can tell you what not to do, and I made every mistake. I think I can't always tell you what you should do, but instinctively, I think I'm in a position to maybe dole out some advice. And if nothing else, dole out some hope. I think most people in that position, when their kids are struggling, they just want to hear that it might turn out okay. And I have the perfect living, breathing example who sleeps in my house sometimes that it can turn out okay. So reach out.
If you want to see like every example, like an archive file of just all the times I didn't know a picture of me was being taken until I saw a camera in my face, you should follow his Instagram.
Yeah, I got a lot of more of Ryan from behind. You get a lot of.
Hey, the back of the head is still the head. That's what I always say. Awesome. So reach out to him. I'm glad, Ryan, you brought up the fact that your videos are still up. I did mean to ask that, and I forgot, and I didn't write it down. So yeah, follow along because he talks about a few different ones throughout the years, and that might be kind of cool to go take a trip down memory lane with the book. And the book is really enjoyable. Like I said, there's so many different stories in one book coming from two people. You can look at it as a parenting tale. You can look at it as a ski tale. You can look at it as a backcountry tale, a New Englander tale, an adventure story. You could actually get some sitcom out of it. I could rewrite some of this into a sitcom.
Yep.
I wouldn't, because I don't know. Now that I say it, it's kind of disrespectful.
No,
Sorry,
no,
boys.
there's a lot of laughs in there. I mean, I laugh at myself more than anybody. There's some funny parts there for sure.
There definitely are, and it is wonderful. Without Restraint, go ahead and look in the description. You will find all the links they talked about. I'll go find it on Amazon, put that link in there. I'll make sure it's all there for you all to find very easily. Read it. Put it in your summer reading list. If not, read it on the gondola or on the chair. I don't know. I had lifties who used to read books and then just hand them to me. He's like, dude, I'm done with this. Take it. And I'm like, all right, maybe that'll happen too. Share the wealth, man. Thank you, gentlemen. Dude, this was awesome. And when you move on to the next thing, your next big adventure, your next book, Ryan, if you start writing guidebooks, that's fine too. Call me up. We'll talk. What do you say?
Thank you. This was
That
fun.
would be awesome.
Yep.
I would love to write a guidebook sometime. Somebody else wrote the one I wanted to write, but now I'm trying to ski everything in his guidebook. So we'll see.
Fair
We'll
enough.
see what it evolves to. But I appreciate you very much. You asked great questions. You didn't get mad at me for rambling on for 5 minutes straight. So you're patient. You're a good host, man. And I was stoked to get to have this conversation with you.
Thanks,
Awesome,
Tim.
and I appreciate it. Let me break a fourth wall for you all. Every podcast host, every radio host in history loves when the guest talks. That's less we have to do, and it's wonderful.
We're
love
good at
you
that
guys
part. We
for
make that very easy. No, we just hit record and we'll go.
I love it. Thank you, guys. I do appreciate it, and we'll see you out there. Actually,
Thanks,
I do have
everybody.
some news, but even when this comes out, it might be announced, it might not be, but I just want to brag that I know something that you all don't, but you might know it by now. So, whatever. Anyway, guys, have a good night,
All right.
y'all.
Thank you so much.
Squeeze.
And there they go. Robert and Ryan DeLena, the father-son team who wrote the book Without Restraint. Please, like as we were saying, check the show notes. You'll be able to find links for the book to purchase the book. You'll find links to Robert and Ryan. And then, if that doesn't work for you, go ahead. Put Without Restraint in your favorite search engine. It'll come up and then you can buy the book. And then, as I said, read it. It's a great story, and it's a story that is, about parenting, about being a kid, and then about a skiing and adventure. It's all kinds of stuff, a lot of bang for your buck, and a really interesting read, and I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to see those guys during the season, and I'm pretty sure I will, but again, as I'm recording this, now we all know I record them before they come out. As I'm recording this, I know something that not everybody else knows, and it might be out now. It might have been announced by someone else, because I don't think I can announce it right away. I should ask, but they're going to be somewhere, I'm going to be somewhere, and then we're all going to be somewhere together, right? It's like I've joked about. We all end up knowing each other. Isn't that weird? We're such a small group here. Not a small group, but tightly knit group, actually, would be the more accurate way to put that. Thank you for listening to the Skier Expedia podcast, Off-Season Shenanigans, Episode 1 with Robert and Ryan DeLena. As I said, we're going to do some stuff throughout the season, but this program will be bi-weekly. Every 2 weeks, not every week. As the other show is, that'll start again during the season, down September, October, sometime around September and October. I'm tripping over my words. Like I said, man, I am under the weather. I said at the beginning of the episode, and I'm still not. Can you hear that my nose just isn't working? I'm sure you can. Anyway, this program will be bi-weekly, so make sure you subscribe so you know exactly when to come out. Subscribe, follow on your favorite podcasting app or the Podbean app, which is which is where I am hosting the program. The program is hosted, so that's the easiest way to do it. Don't forget to go to skirexmedia.com. Don't forget to follow on some social media. Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I haven't been doing much on social media lately. I'm a little bit of a social media burnout. I'm not sure how everybody can keep it going. There's two people I want to hire eventually, a secretary and a social media person, but Skirex Media is far from hiring someone new. You know what I'm saying? That's not even self-deprecating. In any case, make sure you follow, subscribe on your favorite podcasting app or you can go to skirexmedia.com. You can listen to the program there, and you can also sign up for the Skirex Media newsletter, which I need to get back into doing more regularly. Also, if you would like the ad-free version of each of these programs, just like the winter show, you can go to Patreon. Patreon.com/skirexmedia. Check out each tier. There's tiers for everybody, starting at $1 with free trials. Right? Right. Thank you again for joining me on the first episode of the summer show, the Off-Season Shenanigans show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any kind of tip or trick or comment or concern or anything else you'd like to say, you can contact me very easily. DMs on the social media, skirexmedia.com, and the contact info will be in the show notes. And as I always say, don't look at the description while you're driving. Wait till you pull over, right? Right. I am, of course, Tim from Skirex Media, and I will see you out there during the summer, and then during the fall, and then during the next ski season, which is right around the corner, the outdoor season anyway. Right? Right. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. I will check you in a couple of weeks. Laters.